Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. You daily dive into the news. It is Monday, and there is a lot to talk about, starting with this. This might be one of the biggest online creator scandals of the year. You've got accusations of abuse, assault, blackmail, and even animal cruelty. Because over the weekend, you had Twitch streamer Emiru unveiling some pretty horrific allegations against her ex and fellow streamer Mizkif. Right? If you're unfamiliar, they are big and notable names in the streaming space, though you also might recognize their names from some pretty high-profile incidents over the last couple of years. But what you had in the stream from over the weekend was Emmy dropping a massive bomb.
Today, I'm finally going to be opening up about the psychological and domestic abuse, stalking and harassment, sexual assault, and threats of blackmail that Mizkif has done towards me, and some of these issues which are still ongoing.
Right, and that's exactly what she appeared to do. She outlined her and Mizkif's entire relationship starting back in 2021 when, before they started dating, he offered to move her into the house to escape stalkers around her place in Kansas. And then at the start of 2022, they started dating after she joined OTK, which is the streamer conglomerate that Mizkif helped start with other big streamers like Asmongold. And you had Emmy saying that there were some red flags right off the bat.
It's not a secret. I think everyone who paid attention knew that he was very controlling over what I wore, to a degree, who I was friends with, and even when I would stream.
And then even worse, she alleged that he'd throw things at her like water bottles or his phone, and even gave her a black eye once. But then also you had Emmy saying that Mizkif would say it was an accident and she brushed it off. Then you had Emmy saying that it was after Mizkif's cancellation over the cover-up allegations where things got really bad and he became obsessed with the fact that her viewership numbers were higher than his. Where they're saying that it went as far as making her stream at different times in hopes that the overlap between the audiences wouldn't impact him as much. And saying one time when they did stream together, he was so mad that her numbers were better that he broke a door. And she also said that another time he started throwing things because one of her YouTube videos was performing well, leading her to say,
So basically, I felt like I was kind of stuck in a loop where I felt like I had to constantly perform and like prove my value to not be thrown away. But at the same time, if I ever performed too well, I was going to be punished for it.
But then Emmy saying that things got to a point where she knew that she needed to move out, especially because Mizkif was getting even more aggressive, saying he was punching holes in walls, banging on the door when she locked herself away in her streaming room, and even flying down the road at 150 miles per hour, threatening to kill them both. And then on top of that, she said he didn't respect boundaries, such as in an incident where after they ended things, she was crying and he was holding her. And during that, she said he kissed her face and neck, which she allowed because she was more focused on the sobbing. But also you had Emmy adding that while she was crying, he tried to take things further by suddenly reaching into her pants, with her saying she screamed, prompting him to jump up, and saying that he felt like he did something wrong and left without making sure that she was okay. Right, and then in the middle of this, you had Emmy saying that she tried really hard to keep things cordial because, so much of their lives overlapped, and Miz would respond by apparently berating her and accusing her of trying to harm his career. And you had Emmy saying that his pettiness over this extended to even the smallest things, like when he complained in Discord DMs that she was a better tank than him in World of Warcraft and his chat was making fun of him for it. With Emmy then saying eventually she just knew she couldn't maintain any relationship with Mizkif, so she cut off contact and said that she hasn't spoken to him since January of this year. Though that is, you had Emmy saying that he's tried to contact her 40 times since the beginning of the year. And they're sharing screenshots of him appearing to beg for a response and having a long-winded message professing his love for her. Something Emmy also said was composed nearly entirely by ChatGPT. And now, in more recent months, Emmy said that she's heard of Mizkif trying to get a smear campaign going if she ever came forward, and added,
I'm sure he's probably listening now, and it's probably going to come as quite a shock to him that this information made its way back to me and that I've known for months. But if you try to threaten me to stay quiet, especially using my poor dead animals, I'm not going to stay quiet.
And apparently that wasn't coming out of nowhere, because after this, you had Mizkif immediately jumping to accuse Emmy of neglecting her rabbits and his response by not cleaning their cages and leaving them in extreme heat without food or water, which then led over the course of a year to several of them dying because of the alleged neglect. But then as far as the other allegations that Emmy laid out, you had Mizkif having a response for nearly all of them.
In regards to being controlling, I told her many things. I told her to dress older, to stop wearing pajamas, to stop talking about stalkers and schizos as a whole. Stop talking about past relationships, and yes, I didn't want her to travel without me. I also said that I didn't want her to hang out with specific people. This is because I didn't want her to get hurt.
Mizkif also responded to the accusations of violence by saying that he never hit Emmy and her characterization of him throwing things was exaggerated. And with all this, he went on to claim that he and Emmy's entire relationship was toxic, due in part because of how shitty his mental health was after he was canceled. And then also with that, he said that Emmy also threw things like plushies and clothes at him, and he would punch holes in the wall out of anger. And then he also said that they both threatened to kill themselves when things got rough. And then you had Mizkif going on to address the messages that he had sent her since she went no contact with him at the beginning of the year. And with that, saying that he was concerned because he was removed from chats and plans and just really confused. And then as far as the big long love letter, he said that he was drunk and lonely. But then that also didn't stop him from promising to go nuclear in the event that Emmy came forward with any of the issues in their relationship. Or with him saying now that he's going to defend himself and that he has more messages and videos and pictures that he's going to release over time because he has, quote, nothing to lose at this point. And so seemingly this is not where the story ends. And also, of course, because we're talking about two big online personalities, there's been a lot of reactions. So in general, it appears that most are supporting Emmy, and that appears to include other creator Asmund Gold, who's known both of them for years and has talked about the situation a lot. Right? And specifically saw him saying that the argument coming from those defending Miz that he was only controlling because Emmy's content was somehow disrespectful, saying that didn't make any sense. Right? And with that, he touched on the fact that she's always had a cosplay TikTok alongside her gaming content. Right? With Asmund Gold also saying that there was definitely a pattern of weird behavior from Miz.
But also, like, you've got to keep in mind that Miz was also farming content with other girls in real life. It wasn't like super sexual, but it wasn't not sexual either. And like there was an innuendo there. Yeah, he would bring these girls on all the time. So before we go and we talk about like, oh, well, it's just like a boyfriend that didn't want to be disrespected by his girlfriend. How can you talk about not wanting to be disrespected by your girlfriend and even play that card whenever you have a revolving door of girls around that you bring on to farm as if like there might be something going on?
And he went on to say that Mizkif has a history of dishonesty, saying,
but what I can say is that the things that I have seen and everything that I have been witness to indicates that Miz is a liar.
And so with that, regarding the alleged animal neglect, you had Asmund quick to point out that Emmy has spent tens of thousands of dollars on care for the rabbits and clearly cared for them.
As I said, I've never seen any evidence of that. Everything, I mean, again, like whenever she's in her new house and in the house before that, the rabbits were being taken care of and they weren't being abused. You could ask Bonnie and Senna that. It's just bullshit.
And also with this, I'll say, this is kind of just the tip of the iceberg, really. Right? There's all sorts of things kind of shooting off from this. We're now seeing old clips of things surfacing of Mizkif at best being a huge dick to his ex Maya Higa. But hey, for now, that is generally where we are. We're gonna have to wait to see how this plays out. And of course, I'd love to know your opinion, but especially if you're someone that's been in this space, you're very familiar with it. What are your thoughts, opinions, and takeaways here? But then next up, in the news, millions of Americans are about to lose access to food in just a few days, not because there's no money, but because the Trump administration won't spend the money it already has. Right? And to be clear, we're talking about SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as food stamps. And it provides more than 42 million Americans in the United States with money to buy food. So we're talking about 1 out of every 8 people living in this country, mostly children, working people, older Americans, veterans, and people with disabilities. And with this, you've got Joel Berg, the head of the nonprofit Hunger Free America, warning, if the SNAP program shuts down, we will have the most mass hunger suffering we've had in America since the Great Depression. Right? And the reason we're here is the government shutdown, which is now the second longest in US history. But also, here's the thing, even though this shutdown, it started almost a month ago, the administration actually took steps ahead of time to make sure that SNAP benefits were paid at least until the end of October. And so then with that, last week, you had Democratic lawmakers sending a letter to Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins asking that something be done to keep the program going next month as well, right? USDA still has significant funding available in SNAP's contingency reserve, which Congress provides precisely for this reason. That can be used to fund the bulk of November benefits. But then in response, you had a USDA memo simply blaming congressional Democrats, claiming that, quote, contingency funds are not legally available to cover regular benefits. But then going on to claim that the money is reserved only for contingencies like natural disasters, noting that Hurricane Melissa is currently swirling in the Caribbean and could reach Florida. And, while wanting to be ready for a natural disaster may at least seem, somewhat reasonable at first glance, a very key thing here is that the Trump administration has also made massive changes at FEMA that employees and outside experts have warned make the country less prepared. But then also beyond that, the memo appeared to directly contradict earlier guidance from USDA detailing its plan for a lapse in funding, which noted congressional intent is evident that SNAP's operation should continue since the program has been provided with multi-year contingency funds to ensure that operations continue during a shutdown. But wouldn't you know it, under this presidency, that has been taken down from the department's website. And so with all this, you're seeing legal experts saying that this new argument, it doesn't make much sense with, for example, one former White House budget official who's now the senior director of the federal budget policy at the Center for American Progress saying, if there's not enough money, you can use it. That is the point of the contingency fund, right? And adding that because SNAP is an entitlement program, it's considered mandatory spending, meaning that the department must use the pot of money, which is then also why you're seeing people like David Supera, a law professor at Georgetown University and a federal budget expert, calling the memo's rationale absurd and adding, nothing in the law imposes that limit of using contingency funding only for natural disasters. And saying both the first Trump administration and this administration, as recently as the end of September, said these funds were available in the case of lapses in appropriations, this is blatantly lawless. And then adding to that, there's a certain irony to the fact that in other cases, the administration may actually be breaking the law by diverting funds to do things like pay federal agents. And so you've got Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries trying to sound the alarm, arguing that the administration has the resources to ensure that no Americans go without food after November 1st, and accusing Republicans of trying to weaponize hunger, with Jeffries and later adding it would be a disgusting dereliction of duty to halt the food assistance. But all of this is, on the other side, with the Trump administration, they've continued to defend itself by blaming the Democrats. And one of the ways they did that is you had the USDA posting notice on its website announcing that federal food aid won't go out November 1st, and adding, Senate Democrats have now voted 12 times to not fund the food stamp program. Bottom line, the well is run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st, and saying we are approaching an inflection point for Senate Democrats. They can continue to hold out for health care for illegal aliens and gender mutilation procedures, or reopen the government so mothers, babies, and the most vulnerable among us can receive critical nutrition assistance. So of course, with that, I have to immediately add that Democrats are primarily pushing for an extension to tax credits for the Affordable Care Act to keep health insurance premiums from shooting up for everyday Americans, and undocumented immigrants are not eligible for the Affordable Care Act. And then of course, in addition to that, Democrats would love to reverse cuts to Medicaid made in Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill that was passed by Congress earlier this year, which is a bill that coincidentally introduced requirements that are expected to push 2.4 million people off of food stamps over the next decade. And then actually, I should mention with that, the Trump administration also cut nearly $1 billion in federal aid for other anti-hunger programs, including one that supplies food directly to food banks. And so we're looking at this situation where these now underfunded food banks are bracing for the impact of the SNAP cutoff. And that's even as places like Washington, D.C. are already feeling the effects of the shutdown thanks to many unpaid federal workers now turning to them for help. To all of this, it's connected, and the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to get, the more likely it is that things are going to spiral out of control. So we're kind of left seeing if anything's going to change in the next few days, or if we're going to enter kind of a next phase in this shutdown and the impacts we're seeing for everyday Americans. And then I've got more news for you in just a minute, but first let me say, debt, it's the only relationship where paying attention still costs you. But luckily, today's sponsor, PDS Debt, they help you finally break up with it. So let's be honest, right? Debt isn't just numbers. It's a system designed to keep you paying forever while banks collect interest like it's rent. But PDS Debt flips that script, right? And they've already helped hundreds of thousands of people cut their debt, stop the harassing calls, and get this, actually keep their own money. Credit cards, personal loans, medical bills, grocery bill hikes. Whatever's been keeping you up at night, they've got custom plans built around you. No minimum credit score, no scams, just real people who know what it's like to be buried and want to help dig you out without another shovel full of interest. And it works. A+ rated by the BBB, thousands of 5-star Google reviews, and 5 stars on Trustpilot. People trust PDS Debt because they actually deliver. Don't let your debt define you. It's just a problem waiting for a plan. So hey, take 30 seconds and get your free assessment at pdsdebt.com/DeFranco. It's pdsdebt.com/DeFranco, or just scan the QR code and take your first step toward being debt-free today. But then next up in the news, forget the next election. This could decide who controls Congress for the rest of the decade at least. Because the redistricting battle, the gerrymandering battle, it has escalated dramatically. Because a lot's been playing out, but just in the last few days, 2 different states have announced that they will officially start the process to redraw their maps mid-decade, but for opposite reasons. Because late last week, Virginia's Democrat-controlled state legislature announced that they'd be kicking off a special session, which actually starts today, to redraw congressional maps to add more blue seats in the House. And that, of course, in order to counter Trump's push to get red states to add more Republican seats. So what we're seeing in Virginia, it is significant for a number of reasons. First of all being, the special session was entirely unexpected, so Virginia's decision to jump into this battle, it's a huge deal. Virginia is only the second Democratic state to actually take the leap and start this process, following in the footsteps of California. Right, and in California, you have Democratic state lawmakers asking voters to approve a ballot measure that would give them 5 more seats, most likely. Right, and we'll know soon enough, November 4th is the special election, which way that goes, though polling right now seems to be more in favor of yes on Prop 50, which would open those seats up. Right, and so Virginia's decision to join California, it's also notable because we really haven't seen many Democratic states stepping up to counter Republican efforts. Because there have been a growing number of red states passing new maps, including Texas, Missouri, and most recently, North Carolina. And that's also as you have Trump and his allies pressuring lawmakers in several other states to follow suit. But also, a huge thing here is that it is harder to redraw maps in many blue states because so many of them, like Colorado, New York, Oregon, and Washington, have implemented restrictions to prevent political gerrymandering. Also, I'll say in blue states where the rules are more lax, like Illinois and Maryland, the Democratic governors don't seem as eager to pull the trigger. All of which, taken together, makes what's happening in Virginia even more important, and it could actually help Democrats' chances of flipping the House in 2026. Because Democrats currently hold 6 of Virginia's 11 congressional seats, but with redistricting, they could give 2 or 3 additional seats, depending on how aggressive the new maps are. And also, to that point, we don't know exactly what the maps would look like, or even precisely how the legislature will go about doing this. That's all getting sorted out in the special session, but we can at least get a loose idea of how this will probably go down. Because like in California, redrawing Virginia's congressional districts mid-decade, it requires amending the state constitution. To do that, a majority of the legislature has to first approve the amendment in 2 back-to-back sessions, one this year and then again in January. Now, one potential hurdle is that all members in the state house are up for election this year, but Democrats are widely expected to keep control of the chamber and even potentially expand their slim 51-49 margin. So assuming that they can keep their majorities and they can pass the amendment in both sessions, the proposed maps would then go out to voters to decide in a ballot measure. But also that presents another obstacle because, like with California, Virginia has an independent redistricting commission that typically decides on congressional maps. Right now, it's unclear exactly what would happen with that commission, though I will say one possibility is that lawmakers could try to temporarily suspend the role that the independent body would normally play, which is exactly what California did. But also, while that plays out, we then have to look to Indiana, because today you had Indiana's Republican Governor Mike Braun making the major announcement that he was calling a special session starting November 3rd to redraw the state's maps to gain more GOP seats. And there you had Braun arguing that the move was necessary to protect residents from, quote, efforts in other states that seek to diminish their voice in Washington and ensure their representation in Congress is fair. So there you then had some experts pushing back on that, pointing out that Republicans already hold 7 of the state's 9 congressional seats, or around 77%. Right? And that is less than 60% of Indiana voters chose a Republican presidential candidate in 2024. And then also it raises the question about whether the Republicans are going to try to take one or both of the 2 remaining blue seats. Because analysts, they've long predicted that legislators will most likely go after the 1st district in Northwest Indiana, which they've long been eyeing as a flip opportunity. And, well, they could also target the 7th district as well. It's much more firmly blue, and so it'd be harder to redraw that without also diluting Republican voting power in the surrounding areas. But again, while we wait the specifics here, this announcement, it's huge, especially because it was unclear for a while if they'd obeyed Trump's gerrymandering demands. Because for months, Indiana's been a top target of Trump and allies like J.D. Vance, even visiting the state to meet with leaders and encourage them to redraw their maps. But really, until now, at least publicly, Republican leaders have been pretty hesitant, especially as polling has consistently shown that voters don't want a mid-decade redrawing. And in fact, literally just last week, you had a spokesperson for the Indiana Senate Republican caucus saying that there weren't enough votes to move forward with Trump's redistricting efforts. And in fact, you had a spokesperson telling outlets today that the votes still aren't there even after Braun's announcement. But of course, that can definitely change. We'll have to see what happens, especially as they're going to inevitably face nationwide pressure. Though I will say, like, a big thing with Indiana is, unlike California and Virginia, they only need the legislature and the governor to sign off on the new maps. And then, of course, there's the questions about the timing and the legality of it all, because even if they do end up getting the votes to gerrymander, it's widely expected that there will be lawsuits, and then you have to see that play out. Yeah, all of that is to say there's a lot happening. It is just a garbage fire mess, and we're gonna have to wait to see how it plays out going into the midterms. But then next up in the news, we need to talk about how Trump just raised fresh concerns about his health, but then also he floated the possibility of some kind of unconstitutional 3rd term again. Because while speaking to the press on Air Force One this morning, you had Trump addressing comments made by Steve Bannon last week, and there you had Bannon saying that there is a plan to get Trump elected to an illegal 3rd term, but he also didn't provide any more specifics. Right? You had Bannon insisting that Trump was not joking about the idea of another term, as some Republicans have claimed, and adding,
Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
And when a reporter asked about Bannon's comments today, you had Trump responding,
I haven't really thought about it. We have some very good people, as you know.
And then you had Trump going on to falsely claim that he has amazing numbers in the polls and has solved 8 wars.
I have the best poll numbers I've ever had. I mean, I just solved 8 wars and a 9th is coming. I believe Russia-Ukraine will happen.
And then when pressed by another reporter, we saw this.
I'm not sure if anybody would run against us. I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. I really do. I believe that. I would love to do it. I have my best numbers ever. It's very terrible. I have my best numbers. If you read it, am I not ruling it out? I mean, you'll have to tell me. All I can tell you is that we have a great group of people, which they don't.
With Trump then going on to claim that a bunch of Democrats have low IQs, bragging about how well he did on aptitude tests that he took recently at Walter Reed Hospital, and seemingly boasting about his ability to identify basic zoo animals.
The first couple of questions are easy. A tiger, an elephant, a giraffe, you know.
Right, and while understandably we're all probably riding the high of knowing that we have a president that can visually identify a giraffe, it has also prompted some questions about his visit to the medical center. Because a few weeks ago, you had the White House announcing that Trump would be undergoing what they called a routine yearly checkup at Walter Reed. But thing is there that he actually already did his annual health exam just 6 months earlier. And of course, you had the White House physician releasing a memo saying that Trump was in perfect health, and he just so happened to be the smartest, tallest, and bestest president ever. But that memo, it also mentioned that Trump had received advanced imaging. So when asked about the advanced imaging today, you had Trump disclosing for the first time that he had received an MRI.
I did. I got an MRI. It was perfect. Yeah. I mean, I gave you the full results. We had an MRI, and in the machine, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. Yeah.
Did you say what in particular they were?
You could ask the doctors. In fact, we have doctors traveling with us, but I think they gave you a very conclusive. Nobody has ever given you reports like I gave you. And if I didn't think it was going to be good, either I would let you know negatively, I wouldn't run, I'd do something, but the doctor said some of the best reports for the age, some of the best reports they've ever seen.
Now with that, it's important to note that Trump did not actually give the public the full result of his exam as he claimed. Right, and the White House refused to even say why he needed to go in for a second annual exam in half a year. All while the summary from his physician was very light on details. I mean, it didn't even mention the MRI. I mean, this is literally the first time that we're hearing about it, which is then why you have people out there arguing that this just emphasizes the concerns around Trump's health. Noting that an MRI is not usually part of a routine visit. It's typically only used for diagnosing serious conditions. And so with that, calling for increased transparency around Trump's health. But honestly, I think the best bet to actually learn about what Trump's doing is when he accidentally blurts it out himself. But then next up, in I guess your daily WTF news, a man went to a bar dressed as a Nazi, was denied entry, and then ended up getting arrested for assaulting a woman outside. With part of this documented in a now very viral video that you may have seen over the weekend from Athens, Georgia, just off the campus of the University of Georgia. And so you have this guy who's now been identified as Kenneth Leyland Morgan, and in the video it starts after he was reportedly not let into Cutter's pub.
Get the out! Get the out! Get the out!
Don't touch him. Don't
touch me. Get the out.
Don't touch him.
So he's got the full uniform on, even a swastika patch on his arm, and as you can imagine, that didn't go over great with the people outside. And things appear to just continue to escalate until we see him seemingly knock a woman down with a beer mug.
Is this serious?
Oh my God!
No, I have no idea. We're seeing young. No.
Right, and the woman hits reportedly 23-year-old UGA student Grace Lang, and she told NBC News that she knew this guy through a friend of a friend, that he's known in her circles and just kind of around town in general. With Lang also saying that two of her friends, including one who's Jewish, first confronted the man, telling him that he needed to leave, with her then adding he was just feeling very proud of himself for what he was wearing. With Lang also claiming that he swung the beer mug at her after she tried to grab his swastika armband, resulting in her getting cuts requiring 4 stitches to her face. With UGA student paper, Red and Black, also saying that she wound up with a broken nose. And that is, you had local news outlets saying the guy ended up getting arrested and charged with aggravated assault and simple battery. Though also, contrary to some reporting, you had the university releasing a statement saying he is not a student and is not affiliated with the university, and saying his actions, which were caught on videotape, are appalling, and we are grateful to Athens Clark County police officers for swiftly apprehending and arresting him. But for now, we'll have to wait to see how this plays out, though I will say, probably one of the lessons here is LARPing like a Nazi way less popular in real life than, I don't know, on X. But hey, in the meantime, let me know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions here. But then next up in the news, Hurricane Melissa may be the strongest hurricane to ever hit Jamaica, and they are bracing for it. Right? And that is, Hurricane Melissa's already been blamed for the deaths of 4 people in Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And it's only gotten stronger, becoming the 3rd hurricane to reach Category 5 strength this year, the 2nd most in any season on record. And last night, satellite intensity estimates suggested never before observed wind speeds of 190 miles per hour being reached in the Atlantic. But also, besides being powerful, another huge concern is that the storm is especially slow moving, which just gives it more time to dump massive amounts of rain in one place. And so according to the National Hurricane Center in the US, 40 inches of rain are possible in parts of Jamaica over the next 4 days. And you've got the center also predicting catastrophic and life-threatening flash flooding and numerous landslides. We're saying this is going to lead to extensive infrastructural damage, long-lasting power and communication outages, and isolated communities. And so on that note, the Jamaican government has now ordered the evacuations of several vulnerable communities throughout the country, including parts of the capital, though the entire island has been deemed threatened. So you've got people like Liz Stevens, a professor of climate risks and resilience in the UK, saying communities in Jamaica will need to prepare for potentially unimaginable impacts, and with climate change fueling stronger storms with higher rainfall totals, this is a stark example for other countries as to what may be in store for them. With that in this storm, Jamaica is not the only island at risk here. Right, I mentioned Haiti and the Dominican Republic are already being affected, but Cuba, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and Bermuda, they're all in or near the path of the storm as well. Right, and then as far as the United States, fortunately, it's only expected to be impacted indirectly, with the storm probably bringing some heavy rain on parts of the East Coast. But of course, like with hurricanes we've seen before, it could be worse, it could be better, it could be just as expected, and we're gonna have to wait to see how this plays out. And that is where this video is gonna end, but there is more to watch, because this is just one of 3 things I do. I've got new episodes of my podcast right here. I've got my weekly interview podcast, In Good Faith. This week we had John Lovett on. It was a fantastic episode. And then of course my weekly Wednesday Crash Out with Alex on Crashing Out. But hey, no matter what you do, let me just say thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here for more news tomorrow.